Welcome to today's
Sir.
lecture.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Good
Were
evening.
you able to do the project in the past 2 days? Hello. Were you able to do the project? Okay, that's fine. I was asking if you were able to do the project, the one that I gave you guys on Tuesday morning. I mean everything from starting.
What I did is that I went through silent, is it?
Yeah, it depends on how you pronounce it, but either pronunciation it works. Depends on how you pronounce it. Okay, that's fine. If you get time after this lesson or even tomorrow, try and run it and see how it works. And then
Okay.
you can rewatch the videos where we talked about views and then save any questions that you have, and we'll discuss them tomorrow since tomorrow is a Q&A session.
Okay.
Alright. So today we're going to have a short lecture. I'm sure maybe it's a 20 or even a 30-minute lecture, right? So for today, I want us to look at HTTP status code, right? HTTP status code. So the status codes are these things. My views, okay. These codes, this status equals status.http underscore and then the status code. These are the status code, right? All of these ones, the one that you return as a part of your response. These are status codes, and they are very important. Okay, so right, I just want us to go over. what they mean, and the most frequently used status codes that you interact with almost on a daily basis. Okay, right. So whenever, right, a front-end application, a mobile application, browser, or any other system communicates with your backend, right, the backend normally sends two important things, right? It sends, right, so the backend normally sends two important things. So it sends one, it's some data, right? Two, an HTTP status code, right? Right, so an HTTP status code is simply a number that tells the client what happened to its request, right? So an HTTP status code, right, is simply a number that tells the client what happened to its request. So a client can be a website, a mobile app, a desktop application, or any other system, as long as that system communicates with your system using your API. Then that system, we call it what? A client, right? If your system fetches data from another system, then we are going to call your system what? A client. So that is basically what a client is. Right. So a status code allows the backend to communicate the result of a request, right? So there are five, right? There are five main groups of status codes, right? So there are five main groups of status codes, right? So each group represents something different and something unique compared to the other group, right? So for group one, we have one, let me say, right? So for group one, right, we have one XX. So one XX is from 10 to 199, right? So this is what informational, right? Then we have 2XX, which is 200 to 299, right, which is success, right? And then we have 3XX, which is 300 to 399, right, which is redirection, right? Then we have 4XX, which is 400 to 499, right, which is a client error, right? And then we have 5XX, which is 500 to 599, which is a server error, right? Remember that the client can be a mobile app, a website, or even a system when it fetches data from another system, right? And the server error is your system or the system that you're fetching data from, right? If a website is communicating with your system and it gets the 5XX error, then that means your server crashed and there's a problem with your code, right? So these are the five main groups of HTTP status codes. You're supposed to know all these five groups and what each group stands for and when to use each group, right? So 1XX is just informational, to give basic information, and 2XX 2xx, is just good. It means that the request was successful. And then the 3xx just says no, you're at the wrong place, you're supposed to go to that place, right? And then 4xx is just to tell the client that you made a mistake. What you sent is not what is required, right? And 5xx is that the client sent the correct information, but I have a problem processing that information, right? So with 1xx, right, informational responses, right? So 1xx, right, it just says I received something from you, and communication is continuing, right? But in normal REST API development, you not manually return 1xx status code very often, right? Usually web servers, proxies, browsers, HTTP libraries, etc. manage this automatically, right? So most of the times you're not going to encounter these status codes, but it's very important for you to be able to know them and understand them, right? And then we have 2xx, right? This is one of the most important groups for backend developers. For you as a developer, right? This is what one of the most important groups, right? So the 2xx range means that the request was successful, right? So let me say 2xx range, right? So within the 2xx range, the most common status codes that you're going to use are 200, 201, 204, no, it's 202 and 204. 200 just means okay. 201 means created, right? 202 means accepted, right? And 204 means no content, right? Yeah, so within the 2xx range, these are the status codes that are common, right? So with 200, which means okay, right? 200, that means okay. So a client sends a request to your server, you process that request, and it's successful. You just return what? Just a basic 200. Say, okay, I saw your request, I processed it, and it was what? Successful. This is the status code that you're going to use most of the time, just to tell the front end, okay, we did it, it was successful. We can now move on to whatever is next, right? So this is the most common HTTP status code for a successful output, right? For example, like in our student management system, let me go to who is the views, okay, right? Like here, like our request method is what? Get all students, right? If we get all of this, we got all of the students, and we returned what? 200. Okay, just so that you can tell the front end, you sent a request to get all of the students, and I got all of the students, and I returned all of the students for you, so my job is done. So the code is what? Okay, I did what you asked, and I returned it. That's what 200 what it means, right? Then we have 201, right? So 201 created is extremely important when building APIs, right? So what it means that the request succeeded and a new resource was created, right? So whenever you're working with a post request, right, this one, a post request, you're always going to be working with that 201 status code, because a post request, you add new items in the backend, you create new items in the backend. So you can say that a post request always goes with what, with a HTTP 201 status code, right? Because what it's a created, this means that I got the information and I created the new user, the new students or whatever, right? Then we have a status code 202 accepted, right? So what this means is that the backend is going to say to the front end, I accepted your request, but the work has not necessarily finished yet, right? For example, the front end, right, it sends a message to my server, and the message is saying that generate a user document about a certain user. I'll just say send 202 back to the front end to tell it, okay, I got your request and it's worked, but I haven't finished processing your request. So I'm still in the process of what? Finishing your request. So this is what 202 means. So 202 just means I accepted your request, but the work is not necessarily finished yet, right? So maybe the work is going to finish after maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, etc, right? So with this one, 202, it's useful for background jobs like sending emails, generating reports, or processing videos, right? So then we have 204. 204 just means no content, right? So no content, it means that the request succeeded, but I do not send any data back, right? Like this one, response status equals to status dot http 204 no content. The difference between this one and this one is that with 200 we send data back with right, but with 204 we don't send any data back, we just send what we just send the status code, right? So what 204 means, what your request succeeded, but I'm not going to send any data back to you. Just know that the request succeeded. Whatever your request was supposed to do, it did it. You can then now move on to whatever you want to do next, right? So these are the common 2xx range status code, right? Then we have 3xx, right? So in 3xx we have 302 found, right? 307 temporary redirect, right? 308 permanent redirect. Oh yeah, and we also have 301 moved permanently, right? So yeah, just because I named these four doesn't mean that with the 2xx range it's only these four status codes. There is from 200 up to 299, but these are the common ones. These are the ones that you are most likely going to interact with every day. Same goes for 3xx, 4xx, and 5xx, right? Then moving over to 3xx status codes, right? So 301, it means moved permanently, right? for a user will go to our URL, let's say this one, students, right? So previously this was the URL that we used to get to the students, right? But you now change the URL to students slash API 2 to something like this. Let's say we changed our URL to students slash API 2, right? So we can still keep this students slash only URL, but when the user goes to that URL, right, it will tell the user that the resource has been permanently moved to another URL. It's no longer available to this URL. You need to go to this new URL if you want to access it. So that is what 301 means, right? And then 302, what 302 found, right, is commonly used as a temporary redirect, right? So what 302 does is, right, it just means for now go to another location. For example, right, we have a slash login page. The user logs in, right? After the user logs in, we then redirect to the user to the dashboard page. This is what 302 means. It just means that for now go to another direction. User logged in, then we redirect them to slash dashboard, right? This is what 302 means, right? Then we have 307, right? So 307 is just a temporary redirect to tell it, okay, for right now this is not available at this resource. We will just redirect you to that to this new URL, right? And then the 308, a permanent redirect, just means that we are no longer coming back to this site, to this URL. Always go to that new URL, right? This is what 308 means, right? Then we have 4xx, right? 4xx. So under 4xx, right, we have 400 bed request, 401 unauthorized, right? 403 forbidden, right? 404 not found, right? 405 method not allowed, right? And then 422 unprocessable content, right? And then 429 too many requests. And then 422, and here is 409, right? Conflict, right? So the with the 4xx range, right? So the 4xx are client errors, right? So which means that something is wrong with the client's request. So our code, our backend is working correctly, but whatever the front end sent is wrong. We can't process it in the backend, right? So the keyword is what? Client. These are client errors, right? So 400 bit request, right, is just means that the client sent wrong information. Whatever the client sent is wrong. For example, we wanted the client to send a name, right? To send a name, but instead, yeah, okay, let's say wanted the client to send this, right? The JSON of this name, and then let's say Brandon, right? Wanted the client to send this, but instead they just sent this, just an empty name. This is a bad request, right? Or I was just badly formatted by the front end, right? So this is what a bad request means. You are going to encounter this one a lot when the client sends wrong information, right? And then we have 401 unauthorized, right? So what unauthorized means is that I don't know you. That's what it just means. I don't know you, right? So 401 is like is, for example, it's like a security guard. You go to a company, and in order for you to check in, the security guard needs to recognize you, and you get to the company, to that particular company, and the security guard says, I don't know you, go back to where you came from. This is what 401 means. It just means I don't know you, so you can't access the system, right? And then we have forbidden. So what forbidden means is that I know you, but you are not authorized to access what this you're not authorized to access this portal. For example, you created your user role. It's a big system, a company system, right? They set your user role to as an employee, right? So it means you can only access URLs that have employee slash, right? Then you try to access a URL that has admin slash. So you are going to get a 403 error. The 403 error means that the system checked, okay, I know you are Brandon Kumalo, you are an employee, so you can only access what employee URLs, and you can't access what admin URLs. So I know you who you are, but you don't have permission to enter this building. You don't have permission to do this task. This is what forbidden means, right? And then 404 not found, right? 404 is just means that whatever I was looking for, I didn't find it. It's like me right now leaving home, right, going to a shop to look for bread, and then I don't find bread. That is 404. Whatever I was looking for, I didn't find it, right? And then we have 405, right? 405 method not allowed, right? For example, my API only accepts a get request, get request, right? And then the front end sends a put request to my view. That method is not allowed. This is where we return 405, right? And then 409 is a conflict error, right? So it means that okay, I saw your task, I processed it, but there's a conflict. It's not making sense. Yesterday you said it's only supposed to be 2, but today you're telling me that it's now supposed to be 3. I'm now confused. So which is which? This is what it means, right? And then 422 unprocessable content. What this one means is that whatever you send, I saw it, but I can't process it. I don't have the processing power, or whatever you sent, it can't be processed by this view. You need to process it. You need to send it to another view, right? And then 429. This is another HTTP status code that you might encounter a lot of times, especially if you are going to be calling other system APIs, right? So 429, it just means that too many requests, it means that you're now calling my API a lot of times. So hold on, let me cool down, right? So it's just an error that, okay, wait, I can see your request, but you're now calling me too many times, so I can process all of your requests right now, right? So just hold on, try again after 2 minutes, right? This is what 429 means, right? Then we have 5xx. These are server errors, right? So server errors is your code. Now it's your code that is wrong, right? So within server errors, right, the most common one is it's 500, right? So the most common one is 500, which means internal server error. 502 bad gateway, right? 503 service unavailable, right? 504 gateway timeout, right? So with this one, right, 500 internal server error, right? So what the internal server error means, in simple terms, your code crashed. That's what it means. It just crashed. Your server is down. It's not working anymore. You need to handle it, right? I can't even reach your server. Your server crashed. This is what it means, right? This is what just internal server error means. It means your server crashed. Whatever request was sent by the front end, by the client, it was correct, it was legit, it was authenticated, but your server had issues. You failed to think about error handling, try catch block, your if else statements. Something went wrong and your server crashed. So you need to take a look at your code and how you wrote your system. So with 500, the problem is you, the developer. So you're the one who needs to take the blame, right? And then 502. 502 means what? Bad gateway, right? So this one, it's a bit tricky, right? But you get to understand it as you write, as you create more systems and you communicate with other APIs, etc., etc., right? So a bad gateway normally occurs when one server communicates with another server and receives an invalid response, right? For example, I'm sure maybe you have seen a 502 bad gateway error. For example, if you try to access a certain website and it doesn't respond after 1 or 2 minutes, then you get a bad gateway error, right? This just means that whatever protection that the website uses, whether it's Nginx or it's Cloudflare, you try to communicate with the server, and the server returns something, a certain error, or it returned the wrong response. It just caused a bad gateway. So with 502 again, the problem is you, the developer. Something went wrong with one of your responses. You need to take a look at your API again, right? And then we have 503. 503 service unavailable. What this means, so the server is temporarily unable to handle the request. This is what service unavailable means. right? For example, this can occur when the server is overloaded with requests. It has reached the maximum of its RAM and CPU power, right? Or so, which means you need to upgrade your server, right, so that you can able to handle more requests. Or it occurs when the application is under maintenance, when you as the developer are working on this on that particular API. So whenever someone tries to access it, you just return 503 to tell it it's unavailable, right? Or whenever a service is temporarily down, right, and they're still are working on it, or when the application has reached that capacity, right? So this just tells the clients that the service exists. Yes, it's there on the back end, but it currently cannot handle your request, right? The client is not going to know why it can't handle the request. Only you, the backend, can know why, right? And then we have the last one, 504 gateway timeout, right? So a gateway timeout means that I waited too long for another server to respond, right? For example, I go to my website, right? I log in onto a system, and I go to the login page. I send my credentials to the backend. Okay, I log in now. I make a payment request. Whilst I make a payment request, I make a payment request to the backend, right? The backend gets my request, and the backend calls another external payment API. In this case, let's say it calls PayNow Zimbabwe, right? So in the end, the payment provider takes too long to respond. Eventually, the gateway between my backend and that payment, eventually the gateway between my backend and the payment gateway stops waiting. It just crashes. So it may return at 504 gateway timeout. Right. So what this means that another service took too long to respond. So with 504, the problem, it can be your code, or it can be the external API. Right. So the problem can be either one of the two. So you have to check your code first to make sure that it's set up correctly when calling that API. Right. So any questions are with status HTTP codes? Any questions? So I take it that you all understand, we now understand our HTTP codes and what they mean. Okay, great. So then I guess that's it for today. Today I just wanted us to look at HTTP codes. So nothing deep, no new Python code that we're learning, just the basic HTTP codes, so that I can give you guys more time to process what we have been learning over this week, so that the others can also catch up. All right. So tomorrow we're having a Q&A question. So if you have any questions, or if you currently don't have any questions, you can start writing them down. Then you can ask them tomorrow, and I'll be able to answer them for you. All right. So if there are no questions, then that's it for today, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.